Hello and welcome. This is the GameGuru Max live broadcast number, I don't know. Go look on YouTube. This will be another extended live chat session. No, I'm only joking. I'm actually going to show some software today. So thank you for your patience during the first couple of broadcasts of January. But it took a little while just to get all my ducks in a row. And now I can show you some little bits of software. Not a lot, just a little bit, just to tease you into it. But, you know, in 6 months' time, we'll be at full roll with lots and lots of things happening in parallel and plenty to talk about. But it will be done in the right order. So, if anyone's new to this format, I have asked the obligatory question, can you hear me? And I've actually figured out a little thing where I can actually have my chat session in a pop-up. So I'm going to look for, yes, I can hear you. No one's preempted it this time. So I ask, can you hear me speak? And please post it in the live chat so I know that I'm talking to you and not just to me. Lustinian Mapping says, yes, you can hear me. Great, thank you very much. Thanks, Preben. So now that's out the way, the format is I will talk for a bit, you will think up some interesting questions and post them in the live chat, and I answer them at the end. And I have to cram all of this into 15 minutes, which I have never succeeded in. In all the broadcasts, I have continually failed to hit the 15-minute mark because I want to. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Tiny Installer. And I had a bit of a review, and I actually demonstrated the Tiny Installer a couple of broadcasts ago. And so I'm not going to waste your time installing GameGuru Max development build in front of your eyes again. Just go back to a previous live broadcast and check that out. But what I can say is that we've continued to work on it, improve both the installer and the attached auto updater as well. So we're going to release a build. Drum roll, when are we going to release it? Very soon indeed, unless someone puts the brakes on, which can still happen in development. I plan to release it this Friday, publicly, so everyone will get their first build of 2021, and I am very pleased and honoured to demonstrate what you're going to get on Friday, and this will be the format. I show you something on Wednesday that you get to play on Friday and across the weekend. So hopefully this will work. So certainly start posting your questions while I dive in and launch the software. So, done a couple of things. I'm still working on it, but I actually got the launch time for the app to something like 45 seconds to about 8, 9 on my computer. I want to get that down to less than 5 or 4. If I can do that, then the not responding thing can never show up. It's part of the operating system's mantra that if a thing is basically stalled for more than 5 seconds, it pops up and not responding. I want to get rid of that pretty much for everyone within the minimum spec that we've advertised before. This thing that you can see in front of you right now, certainly not going to keep it as a text message box. I think it would be nicer as part of the UI, but you can kind of get the idea. This has now detected, so remember you ran the software for the first time, it actually detects, oh, there's a new version available, and it lets you know. If you click yes, you go to the auto updater. If you click no, you carry on. The reason I'm seeing this is because I have what's called an internal build. There'll be 2 kinds of builds. The internal builds, which we subject ourselves to until it's bug free, and then there's a public build that you get. So it's detected that I'm on my internal build, but the server says there is a different version, that's the public build. So don't worry too much about it. This is just something us internal people see when there's version disparity. For the vast majority, the public versions is the only one you'll be interested in, and you'll only see this when there's a new version available. But if you tune in every Wednesday, you'll know that there's a new version on the way. So I'm going to click no and start creating. So I'm going to show you a few things, not a huge number of things, because I do want to leave some time for answering questions, but I do want to show you kind of some of the ground rules for what you're going to be doing in 2021. The first thing is to know what is complete, what is not even started, and what's in the process of being created, and we're revealing early versions of it. So I think it's very clear that you understand, you know, oh, they think it's finished, do they? And then you can start feeding back to us. But if you see something which says, no, we're still working on it, then you don't have to be as brutally honest with your critique. So the way we've done it is this. So you'll actually see every tool bar icon or button has what's called a tooltip. And there'll be a bracket at the end of the tooltip if we have something to say about it. If you don't see in a bracket, it's finished as far as we're concerned. If there's a bracket, it means we've got work still to do. So as you can see, this feature is not yet available. So that's pretty straightforward. We haven't created it yet, so that arrow doesn't go anywhere. Whereas you look at this one, Sculpt Terrain, this feature is still being improved. So we are giving you access to things like creating a hill, but we're saying we're not finished with it. So don't think the speed, the way it looks, the functionality of how you can edit it, that's final, because it isn't. And the way you know is you look for that bracket. This feature is still being improved. Sometimes we even stick it into actual component titles. So in the tutorials, this feature is incomplete. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, in that the only way we can create a tutorial video is if we actually finish the software to then record it and then talk about it. But we are actually having a little plan here where we can actually create draft videos when we finish sections. So it's sort of like a sketch storyboard of what we want our final tutorial to look like, and would be subject to change, but just before we release the product, when we've actually finalized all the graphics, all the buttons, everything like that. So as you can see, paint and add vegetation are much the same. This feature is still being improved. Object tools, that certainly is available to us. We've got these, which are still hidden. Not yet available, which means there is nothing to test until we actually get it into the we've got something to show, in which case it's switched to approved. And of course you can test game quite fine. And of course VR, it's not yet available. Again, it's working on in the background. We finish it and then we can actually reveal it here. We can release either an early version, which will say it's in the process of being improved, or you won't see any bracket at all, which means we think the whole of the VR experience is finished. And that's where you can chime in with some feedback. We've got some other ideas that I can just talk about verbally. Is during the dev builds that you'll be able to get every Friday, there'll be another icon here with a little picture of a bug. And that bug will allow you to report not just bugs that you find, but feature requests. I'm going to tie it into a bug tracking system as well. So you don't have to kind of leave the comfort of the software to go out and report a bug. We're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to report what you see that you think is wrong or an anomaly, and so we get to know about it. I think that way we can get to the bugs quicker, faster, and the build should evolve much like we wanted to, which is completed sections as we move through the development. So that's a little bit of what you expect to see when you hover over and see these tooltips. Another thing that you probably noticed is current objects. It's like, what's that? Well, we're not even finished here. I mean, I probably put a little bracket there, but I couldn't find out the piece of code for getting the tooltip for current objects, no matter how much I searched. I think it's taking this string and making it a tooltip. I don't know. I think it is. I think the default behavior is it just used that. Anyway, the genius Preben will probably figure that out in about 7 seconds once he sees this broadcast. And probably is posting in the live chat right now. So yeah, there'll be a bracket saying this isn't finished, but I'd like to show you what we have so far. Also the ad, we've actually got internal test versions of the new object library with the bigger thumbnails and all this really cool stuff. But because it wasn't in a state that, as I said, hasn't gone through our process of reviews and testing, then I'm not showing it to you until I'm ready to give it to you on a Friday. But what I can do is use the old one to drop in an object like so. And the purpose of the current object, it's actually pretty genius. You select the object, and as you select it, it shows here. This is everything you've selected. So if you actually had a different kind of object, like this one, drop them in and highlighted, you see both of them. It's kind of like seeing everything you highlighted, but here. But what's so cool about that is if I say scroll over to the other side of my town, right, having highlighted it, to say the end of the map in fact, look, I can just select that. I don't have to go find it in this big list, because I actually highlighted it, I can select it again. The reason I think it's pretty cool is it's less things for a new user to get used to. They're already familiar with dragging an object from here, and you've already selected this over here. Then it makes intuitive sense that, oh look, it's there, and you can drag that in. So a really intuitive form of duplicating an object that you've selected, like so. And there's more improvements, I should say, potential improvements, certainly changes into how you can actually drag objects into your level. Right now, you're going to click, let go, drag it across, click, let go, and it drops in. See how many clicks I had to do? When it nice if I could just drag it straight in and let go. Less number of clicks, more intuitive. So those are the sorts of things we're playing around with. And you may also have noticed this at the bottom: group objects, ungroup objects, edit group, lock entity, and delete. The lock and delete you're probably already familiar with. They used to be over here, and I'll go into more details in the future on what that is. But these are pretty exciting. Again, I'm not going to show you until we're happy to get it to a public state, but you can already guess what it is. Let's say I wanted to create a building with lots of tables and cups and saucers on those tables, and then want to grab it all and say, you are now room A. Right, and I'll group them all as room A. That way I can just drag it all around as this big room with everything connected inside it. And also as a bonus, you know, you've got that room. If you wanted to duplicate all that, it's already a group. So you just drag the group in from this side, drag it in, and voila. Now that's still to be decided. That's still a design. It's still up in the air. But I think you can get the idea of these intuitive methods that once you've learned a thing, you apply that same lesson to different parts of the software and you get the great result that you want. So that's just some little hints at what we've done right now, what you can play with on Friday, and what we're currently working on to deliver in the very near future. Other little bits and pieces like subtle changes to the updater, but I think that will evolve over the course of getting closer to the release. And I'm going to stop there because I do want to answer some questions, and I can look at the clock. I have 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer all of the questions I asked you to ask at the start of this, which is very unfair of me. So what I'm going to do is allocate a few more minutes to answering some questions verbally, and then I'll answer the rest in a forum thread, along with this broadcast in recorded form that you can find on the GameGuru forums. So as I said, I've learned a new trick, a little pop out of our live chat. I'm going to look for some questions. There aren't that many, so we might just get away with something approximating 15 minutes. So is this a question or it's just a statement? Can you add a paysafe method? Yes, that was asked last time, and I believe the time before, and I think the answer will probably stay the same in that we're not planning to add the paysafe card method of payment unless it's already built into the payment systems we already use, or if Steam use it, for example. But there's no plans, there's no item somewhere where we're going to add that payment method, and I would struggle to think where we'd start adding something like that. But certainly post more details in the forum that's connected to this broadcast, and maybe I'll have a quick look at it. Might be a quick ad, but there's currently no plans to do it. After chat is declaring everyone can hear me, which is great. Looking for my first question mark. Can't find anything yet. We might get away with the only live broadcast with no questions. Alas, no, there is one. Here's another request. Please add a way to have waterfalls and import height maps. We are looking at designs for making waterfalls possible, and we are looking at designs for importing height maps. Not promising anything at this time, but both of those sort of make sense for the kind of things we want to do with our terrain system. So I'm not saying no, I'm saying there is a chance and a hope that you'll be able to get both of those things. So watch that space. What's the maximum size of the map? Very, 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 very large. We're using a terrain node system. So we'll start you off with a standard size terrain, but then if you want to make another big chunk of terrain north, you go north and you create another chunk of terrain, connects to existing terrain. Now you've got a nice long map. Then you're going to go wide or even further north or even south, then you can do that as well. And of course, the bigger the map, then the more you've got to design on that map. And the bigger the storage for that level. You're going to have to create a lot of map, you're going to have to store all the details, and it takes longer to load. So it's up to you how big you want your map. You certainly won't be limited by what we impose. Obviously, you know, you're going to have to stop at like 1,000,000 miles or something, but that's just a limitation of available hardware. Here's a question from Retro Game Bloke. Is it or will it be possible to create groups of objects all linked together or saved into one object? It seems you are talking about that now. Yeah, it's all about this design phase. We have a first version of the grouping system, which I think is great. We're just going to kind of put a layer of UI on it that makes it a little bit easier for newbies to use. And along that process, I've already identified that. Wouldn't it be great if you could represent a huge group of objects as one thing? Just as you saw where I could drag it in. And that would be a good idea. Another one, couldn't you save that group? You know, you've already created all that effort of creating that thing. Couldn't you use it for other levels? Couldn't you have that and save your group of objects? And then in a new level, just grab that group and put it somewhere else. All amazingly cool ideas, but nothing's locked down. That will be the purpose of some meetings we're going to have this week, try and lock down that final picture of what we want for grouping. And obviously anything that's cool but it's just too much work, we'll push that into a version 2 after release. So looking for the next question after that one. Here's a question from Bouncy Sky 152. Will Macs have a cinematic mode for recording game trailers and movies? You could just use a piece of video recording software. So run your game, get it full screen, make sure there's no HUD screens or lives or anything like that, and make sure your FPS score is off the screen. Then just hit some really cool screen recording software. I think NVIDIA have one that's built in to the drivers, which is pretty fast. I use something called Bandicam, which is I think there's a free version you can use, and I'm sure there's other solutions as well. And you just record that footage, and then you can save it, edit it, compress it, and then play it back as a story zone or a video zone in your game. So you can do cutscenes like that. But there is no plan to actually create some dedicated cutscene editor in the software. There's no line, there's no task that actually says we're going to do that. So if that's what you meant by cinematic mode, maybe then there's some sort of Lua scripts we can do to support that if that's not the case. And that answer wasn't appropriate. Zorgo33's question, will the next build have the ability for making standalones for game pre-alphas, testing, prototypes and stuff like that? Well, let's see, shall we? You'll notice that there isn't a save standalone here anymore. We'll be tied. But if you look across, we've got a new temp menu. This is basically a dumping ground, and this little about tells you a little about what it is. This won't be in the final software, but it does give you access to save standalone. Do I want to save that? Not particularly. And then you get your save standalone. So yes, the build on Friday will have save standalone, but your mileage may vary, obviously. Here's a question from here's 2 question marks. I'm going to take it from the K. That's nice. Entity Selection Edition. Speaking of entities, every game genre we anticipate in working with would benefit from spawn entity via script. You said it was a wonderful idea. It is a wonderful idea, and I have added it to my designs, and it's most likely going to get created, but it's not called spawn, it's called object generator. So you basically put in objects into this sort of machine, and this machine's job is to spit out clones of that or those objects, which then can then be controlled visually with a logic system where you never need to script. So hopefully that has whet your appetite. Here's one from Kevin Hampson. Question, the new installer you have created, does it allow custom install location? Great question, let me think. The answer is yes. I do remember that there was, you can click on the destination and move it to somewhere else. Maybe you don't want it in your C drive, then yes, you can put it to somewhere else. Even a place that's write enabled, but you don't need to, because there's a separate location for the the documents where you can write all your writable files or your custom files. Synchro62 said, Lee, please no standalone yet. So yeah, certainly post your feedback here. If you don't want standalone, if you think it's premature to allow people to create standalones of basically almost nothing at this stage, then let me know. Let's have some rationale for and against. But it's currently in there in the build, so I'm not changing anything until I have a pretty good reason to do so. Here's one. Sorry for annoying you again. Why not add it? Well, we'll resume that in the forums. Let's see if there's any new questions before I look at the clock. I'm not looking at the clock because it's probably terribly late. Mapping, can you not add blah, blah, blah? That's fine. Retro game, but maybe have a warning on it, but leave it so it can test stuff. You mean like a sort of a watermark splash screen, so you run the executable and it becomes very clear, this is not final, this is test, something like that. Well, I could do. There's time yet, but as I said, we kind of prepare the builds and get them tested and reviewed so I can talk about them today. To then go away and change that substantially and then release it on Friday means I've just skipped any further reviews and any further testing of that build. And if anyone who has actually been sort of say an industrial program, and us changing something at the last minute and then releasing it to lots and lots of people probably isn't the best thing to do in the world. So I'm very cautious about changing it now and this week, but I think it's a good idea, and I shall make a note of it, so we do get that splash screen for people who do want to do standalones for doing their test games. Not that there would be very much to test, I must admit. So thanks for all your questions. I've just checked the clock. It's not too bad, 22 minutes, minus the 2 minutes just to get warmed up in the intro. So I think I've done pretty good. Next week I'll be able to show you a little bit more software, so I'm looking forward to that. It won't be huge strides, not until we get into like the Februaries and Marches and Aprils, but hopefully just by keeping you abreast of exactly where we are, what progress we're making, whether it's fast or slow, should keep you connected to the development and obviously give you a lot of time to feedback and then make your comments as to whether we are going in the right direction or whether we're going in completely the opposite direction. But I'll let you to decide that and comment that in the GameGuru forums. So until next Wednesday, which will be the same time, 4 PM GMT, I look forward to talking to you all again next week. And until then, I'm going to switch to my lovely screen, painstakingly created, and remind everyone that if you are new to these broadcasts, we are running this development in pre-order status. So you can get access to these builds if you pre-order GameGuru Max. And we're offering a 25% discount if you're interested. So until next week, thanks very much for your attention. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.